Welcome back, YouTubers, to my channel of an everyday life of an Aspie. If you're following me and you're new to my channel, I welcome you with open arms. I'm Aspie. I'm all about creating mental health and awareness versus sharing my life stories and experiences with speech syndrome and everything else that comes into the territory of speech syndrome. I also share some tips and advice along the way with some mental health kind of series, regardless what it may be, so that you guys can hopefully find something of value and use to you, as well as just some messages of hope to give you clarity, understanding, and everything else as a message of support as well from the Beauty from Ashes playlistings on my library there. I also right now too have been trying to break away from what I shared with you all of the mental health series, because as promised I am going to share with you all what hopefully I've learnt in this Altogether Autism conference or meeting that they called it, basically the doorway to a world of support network pretty much, which was obviously they called it a meeting or conference, but these conferences they have, I think from memory, if I can recall, if I'm researching right, they have at least 2-3 conferences a year held in different parts of New Zealand. Here, if you're not from New Zealand, I'm going to clarify right now to you basically of what I've learned so far in this conference, broken down to 3 parts, hopefully maybe. So what first part will be covering just the services that is readily available in New Zealand, so that hopefully at the end of this piece there will be some other listings of certain organisations that I might be able to list for you that are seeking, sort of some form of, help and assistance for your child or yourself as an adult, so to speak. And also in the second part we'll be covering about something I learned from the lady who was the guest speaker, Paula Jessop, of what she shared and maybe my input about her life with suspicious syndrome versus my life with suspicious syndrome, or not, depending, because obviously you guys have heard the story. The last part will be part 3, which is going to be based on another support service that's hopefully going to be in more depth and detail for the ones that are in the medical professional field of being a social worker or what have you, called the prison. So enough further ado, before I run out of time, this is going to be the first part of it, of the doorway to a world of support network that I had, of basically this Altogether Autism New Zealand meeting conference that I met up with, every different kind of people around. Basically, the guest speakers, well, the speaker and host was Debra Broughton, as well as Catherine Trezona, who's the national manager of Altogether Autism New Zealand. And basically she was talking about what it is and what the services provide, and I'm going to try and do a quick summary overview of all that, as well as basically just giving you a lowdown of, and again repeat what I've learnt. So let's begin this. As you know, basically this was a network meeting that I went to last Wednesday, I think it was, of the 30th of November. If I've got the date wrong, please forgive me, guys. Just, check up on the Wednesday date, just to clarify for me, maybe just to kindly comment below. But moving on, it's basically, obviously, there was a wide range and diverse group of us being on the autism spectrum. Some of us was there, some of us were, like as said, medical professionals, or just, national area manager of the area of the Manawatu, especially of basically people wanting to know more, obviously, of what autism is all about, as well as services that provide. Some obviously that came to the group meeting were in the field of just in the middle of their training, or into the field of social work and some other health related areas. Basically, some of us obviously in that group were in a diverse group of different conditions, along with Aspie's syndrome, autism alike, basically, that we did a quick introduction of who and what we are, starting with a letter of our name and why we came to the group today, the reason for it. And basically that was just like a quick icebreaker to just get to know people. Obviously some of the people that were there also, even though they may be, certain people also with personal life experiences or working and supporting people with autism, basically they had different hats on, regardless what it is. Clear say example for one of them that we got introduced to was Debra Broughton, basically, who's the local area here in the Manawatu, who also basically does two roles. She's the parent-to-parent area coordinator versus works with Altogether Autism. So look for the basically also to bear in mind though, however, sorry, I'm just trying to look at my notes as I go along. Like, you may be wondering right now as I'm speaking this, what is Altogether Autism? Okay, obviously they think it's government funded. It's obviously a free nationwide service all around New Zealand, obviously for people on the autism spectrum and just people maybe also that wants to know more information of autism or what have you. It's like kind of like a nationwide service that's obviously on World Wide Web too now. That's basically can give you information and advice to everything. The services are to provide as a partnership between the two organisations that was shared in that briefly in that meeting was Parent to Parent New Zealand and Life Unlimited. Basically, this is a nationwide organisation basically for Altogether Autism, and that they've got 11 area managers or area coordinators that coordinates all around New Zealand. But for Life Unlimited New Zealand, just to give you a quick lowdown what it is, basically it's a New Zealand charitable trust, obviously, that offers health and disability services, advice and equipment so that we can live the life we choose to live. It's not a for-profit organisation, so it's obviously, you know, governed by a board of trustees. They solely rely on basically donations and grants from individuals and charitable trusts. Many of the services they provide for, however, in this Unlimited New Zealand groups, basically they solely rely on, you know, being contracted out, shall we say, of the New Zealand government, basically departments, depending on, you know, what area department they need to be. The organisation here began in 1979 as the Disabled Living Centre in the Waikato region of New Zealand, and then in December 1997 they then decided to change the name to what it is now called, or reflected upon of the wider scope of the services being provided of Life Unlimited, which in their philosophy, life is meaning living independence for everyone. So basically, I'll list also in the description the services as mentioned, as well as the services that no. But anyway, moving on to this, Altogether Autism, with the vast amount of information that is available online now today than ever before, Altogether Autism can help us find the information that we require or need with the provision of the tailor-made information packs that they make for us in regards to our inquiry. The team at Altogether Autism is made up of obviously two groups, which are the information officers and researchers. The role and function of these researchers are obviously, number one, they'll look around published journals and articles from different universities around New Zealand and, you know, give us up-to-date information of that specific inquiry we're inquiring about, regardless what it may be. And the next one is number two, consumer reference group. Obviously, this is a group of people basically that, or shall we say, group of people or families who has lived experience that are on the spectrum scale of autism. From what I can recall, also Altogether Autism prints out a journal every 4 times a year, pretty much. And in the last but not least section of the professional expert group, these are the groups of people who are qualified and specialises in their own field of work, regardless what it may be. Here's an example: doctors, clinical psychologists, health and disabilities, kind of social workers versus your social workers, speech therapists, and many more. Obviously, for the Ministry of Health, it's government funded. The NASC, or what they said, what it stands for, is the Need Assessment Services. This is for accessing people's needs and help finding the needs of what we need and support us in any way they can. Obviously, in the Manawatu region, there is a NASC which is Enable New Zealand, and there are pretty much more as well of these NASC groups, but they were just briefly touching on surfaces of what they can recall of the one that was actually speaking about the services. Obviously, you know, need money and support obviously from different things. In 2014, if the person that was diagnosed with autism, they couldn't see a NASC group as leading up until then, because obviously I don't know that, because there was obviously at that time, from what I can recall, if I'm right or wrong, someone can correct me if any of theirs have been following me and are from New Zealand and actually been to this organisation group that I'm mentioning, that basically there are some nurses available for people with autism, people that works along with statistics. People with autism is challenging to get funding and support from us, but that's now starting to evolve and come into play right now. Okay, the information officers and researchers that are in this Altogether Autism organisation, they are based in Hamilton of New Zealand. So what it means for us, obviously, as a person who's maybe seeking out information or whatever it may be, we can ask any questions to, and the consumer reference group does the research and basically do a summary report, gives us a summary report as much as short and possible, and articles to group together in the information pack or the information we ask for to an easy to read, understand format. For example, for some of the questions that we may ask them is, what are the services available for us autistics, or what are the services available for advocating ourselves to other groups to actually create an awareness and understanding. Does vaccines cause, autism, all these and all the like. Autism Spectrum Disorder Guideline 2nd edition is an up-to-date guide, basically, that is actually given, done by the Ministry of Health of New Zealand, and it's readily available online to download and whatever. There's a printed copy, but however, there's only 200 copies available, and we need to be quick, smart, readily able to access it. There's also been like a handbook for diagnosing autism. I've briefly touched on that, which is the DSM-5. There used to be a DSM-4, which is a diagnosing statistic manual, pretty much, that covers all the areas of diagnosing the autistic behaviours and whatnot, as well as in other ethnic groups, as well as not just us Europeans, obviously. They also mentioned briefly about Te Pō, which is funding organisations, which obviously is an organisation in New Zealand, which is mental health, covers around mental health, addiction, or disability, workforce development, basically. And from what I can recall of what they said of the Te Pō, they mentioned 2 grants there, which is number 1, workforce development grant, and number 2 is the consumer leadership grant. So let's just touch base on this quickly. The workforce development grant in New Zealand obviously is a grant that's based available to help cover the cost of employers taking part in leadership and skills developmental activities. And another one is they offer learning and development opportunities that supports leadership and greater alignment to the Let's Get Real Disability and DSS new models for supporting disabled people. And the last but not least about the grant is the third factor of it is develop leadership skills and improve quality of service to disabled people and family. Who can apply to this grant? Obviously, 2 main people there is number 1, disability support service providers who hold a contract with the Ministry of Health of New Zealand, and number 2, disabled people's organisations that are part of the DPO coalition. Applications must be submitted by the DSS provider or DPO provider. Individual participants such as your staff, consumers, whānau cannot apply directly, however. How the grant can be used. Obviously, as I said before, the grant covers the cost of employees taking part in leadership and skills development activities. The grant can be used for example, training fees. Number 2, related resources, e.g. workbooks, tutors, facilitators. Number 3, wages of the course participant of training occurs outside of their regular working hours or backfilling for the trainee if required. Number 4, accessibility costs for employees with a disability, including travel and accommodation, the cost of support people. These costs don't count towards the individual or organisational caps. The grant does not fund course development and administration, standard service delivery, service developments, and business as usual costs. How can this be? How much can be funded for the grants? Obviously, for the participants, can be funded up to $5,000. That's GST inclusive per year, calendar year, and then the organisations can be funded up to $80,000 GST inclusive per calendar year. Okay, just to say this, the grant priorities obviously for this is the learning activity must align with the Let's Get Real disability framework as an overreaching framework, or overarching framework, I should say, meeting the needs of disabled people, whānau, and communities. The learning topics might include the following. Number one, supporting disabled people in the areas of safety, autonomy, self-determination, citizenship, and representation. For example, training on UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Number two, specific disabilities and specialist support, including ASD. Number three, literacy and numeracy development. Number four, disability awareness and the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities for health professionals. Number five, I should say, cultural competency and responsiveness. Number six is your strategic and operational management, governance, and leadership that leads to transformational challenge of an organisation. And last but not least, protecting children with disabilities. Obviously, there are some TOCs for the eligibility who can be applied for this grant. There is obviously for the organisation of the eligibility is two parts. There is number one, funded by the Ministry of Health to deliver disability services, or number two is a disabled persons organisation that are part of the DPO coalition, I should say. And for the participants, is three parts. For the first part, paid employees of a Ministry of Health funded by DSS or a DPO that is part of the DPO coalition, or employed through the Ministry of Health funded DSS individualised funding agents. Number two is your New Zealand citizens or hold permanent resident status in New Zealand. Last but not least, number three is you're supported by the employer to participate in the learning activity. The learning activity must follow the following. Number one, not already fully funded by other agencies or funds. Number two, start and usually end in the calendar year of the grant. Number three, be delivered in New Zealand. And the last one of the grants that we were talking about was the Consumer Leadership Developmental Grant. Okay, this grant is all about basically is available to support disabled people and family to take part in leadership developmental activities. This includes number one, training or learning activities that develop consumers and family leadership skills. Number two, training or learning activities that are for the benefit of the other disabled people or the disability sector in general. How it can be used, the Consumer Leadership Developmental Grant covers the costs of consumers or family whānau taking part in leadership developmental activities for the purpose of their consumer grant, includes disabled people and family and whānau. The grant can be used for, again, similar to obviously the first one that I mentioned of the Workforce Developmental Grant, which is number one, course of workshop fees. Number two, related resources, for example, your workbooks, tutors, facilitators that you need to use. Number three is accessibility costs for disabled people, which includes the travel and accommodation and the cost of support people. Accessibility costs do not count towards the individual or organisational cuts. Who can apply to this? Obviously, must be made by disability support services providers that hold a current Ministry of Health contract, or by disabled people's organisations that are part of the DPO coalition. Applications can be made in support of development activities for consumers associated with the applicant organisation, or an organisation can sponsor an application by consumers beyond their service. Obviously, how much can be funded? Again, similar costs to the first one. Organisations can receive a maximum of $80,000 for this grant. However, in exceptional circumstances, the panel may be able to exercise discretion. Participants, again, as I said before, as stated, they can receive up to $5,000 for training in any calendar year, either from one or multiple applications. Basically, as stated above, applications aren't accepted from individuals but must come from an organisation that meets the eligibility criteria, and that the term used to describe this arrangement is sponsoring. It is the applicant's responsibility to ensure no participant exceeds that $5,000 cap. Participants must inform their sponsoring organisation if they are receiving funding from this grant through another DSS provider. Obviously, as before, this is just similar structure and layout of the, how much can be funded and the grant priorities, the eligible criteria obviously is similar basically to what I shared basically. Also, the last bit that we were touching briefly on also, even though it was after lunch, we were talking more about this kind of like support group for this is PRISM, which has been, you know, developed by Altogether Autism, that specifically does blinds for professionals with autism spectrum disorders. There's some day-to-day training, obviously, on what autism is like and what can be done to help people with autism. This is obviously outside of Altogether Autism cost, though, however, so obviously we have to find the funding if we are trained in that specific field on our own, and this will vary from, you know, between $175 to 230 New Zealand dollars, depending on obviously certain criteria there, which will be depending on other people's needs, meeting up their needs, regardless if someone's, you know, sensitivity to, you know, lights and whatnot, as well as, you know, the catering needs, if there's any, you know, people with different dietary requirements and like. So yeah, basically we also touched briefly on just quickly about, you know, autism and on the jobs and stuff. So yeah, this is all what I can think of right now about the first part of the series of my Altogether Autism conference group thing. Feel free to follow me on basically the next part of the videos that I'm leading up to the, you know, this, if you want to know more. Give me the like for thumbs up for support. Comment below if I missed out anything, or just feel free to comment if I've missed out anything. Feel free to just, you know, say hello if need be in the comments description, whatever below. Also, if you feel the need or have to, private message me if you have to on my Facebook, AspieAnswersAll. Feel free to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, AspieAnswersAll. Feel free to also just subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and also share these videos around to family and friends. And all for the guys, thanks for support, thanks for watching, do what you love what you do. Until next time, Aspie signing out. See you again soon.